Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. Before we go any further and we start with this video, I highly recommend, if you haven't, going back and watching the previous video that we provided. It's vital for you to understand the gravity of the situation and to have some actual context as to what we're going to be showing you in this video. It's safe to say at this point, I believe I have solved the majority of the questions we've always seek to answers for. And what I'm going to suggest as an end result is that we push a public inquiry to be carried out by all validators and all community members that wish to participate to take all of this evidence, right, and produce it to Binance and get them to conform, okay, and abide by that final judgment. This is absolutely crucial because everything that we're going through and all of the energy that's been put into this is to figure out exactly how much of the assets sent to Binance belong to TFL. Okay? And we've managed to do that. We've been able to do that because we have been able to backtrack the blockchain's data and we know that they use the memos. I've managed to locate those memos. And as I said in my previous video, I would go ahead and I would do the arduous work of figuring out exactly how much has been sent. So we do not need to seek that answer from Binance. Instead, this is going to be a chop and slide, if you will, a quick situation. This can be handled almost instantly if we get the attention of the right people. Now, like I said, because these funds belong to TFL, although they're sat on Binance's exchange, okay, they still become subject to this final judgment. And the final judgment is clear. Defendants shall otherwise burn or destroy private keys in Terraform's possession to wallets or blockchain addresses holding Terraform crypto assets. And this was including the Lunar Foundation Guard. We know all of this to be true because, yes, TFL burned the shuttle bridge, the SEC burned the LFG reserve assets, as we all know, and then here on the chain, we burned the Anchor and Mirror protocol assets. So when I was going through Trial Exhibit P301, the issue always was, and I made this quite clear, we would never actually know, okay, what was on each one of these CXs because, yes, we never had the memo. And what you also need to understand is the memos were redacted. They weren't redacted for fun, okay? Nothing else was redacted but the CEXs. If you wanted to hide something, the likelihood is you're going to put all that extra effort, all of the extra money, right, with legal costs, litigation fees, etc., to make those redactions, right? You're not doing it for nothing. You're doing it because you were clearly hiding something. And now we know all of this to be true. So we're going to be focusing specifically on the Binance deposit wallet because, yes, it's in Trial Exhibit P301. Yes, TFL was sending assets to Binance. Now, again, the issue has always been we don't know because we didn't have the memo. And now we have the memo. Drum roll. Here is every single transaction that Binance had received from TFL. This is gold for us. All of these transactions, and yet they're leading all the way up to the crash. And you're probably sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, well, Jay, is it even that much? Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, you guys. This for me, I don't want to say I threw up, but I got a little bit pukey from this because all of this work and energy and effort we've put in, and we found that, hang on a minute, 3 billion USTC was sent to Binance by TFL. And I figured all of this out, right, just from that memo. And again, that simple piece of evidence, Trial Exhibit P301, was right in front of us the whole time. And that is what has led to this. This is what has given us this final answer that 3 billion USTC was sent by TFL, I have to say it again, to Binance. Okay? So now we can for absolute certain say that 3 billion USTC belonged to TFL is sat on Binance. Okay, so with this list, with trial exhibit P301, with the memo and the final judgment, this is all of the evidence that we need as a community, right, to go head on at Binance and have them act on any remaining funds. Yeah, it might be lower than 3 billion at this point, but it's still going to be a substantial amount. And again, now we have all of the evidence. You're probably going to say, Jay, how much Luna was transacted, which is now Luna Classic? Now, this is where it gets very interesting, and I'm going to answer all of this. The amount that is registered here is very, very small. And this is actually really good because, again, all of this went under the radar, didn't it? How did all of these funds suddenly appear on Binance? How did we miss trillions of LUNC moving from chain to Binance? Why did that never appear? Well, this answers a lot of those questions. So you've got 243 million Luna Classic coins versus 3 billion USTC coins on Binance that belong to TFL. Okay, so now we've distinguished all of this. Let's go over and take a look at the JS held audit. All of the Luna Classic, which was Luna originally, ended up on Binance. It just materialized out of thin air. And this is something that is actually known across board, that these coins just appeared. There's no trace of assets of that much being sent from the chain directly to Binance. When looking at the audit itself, from May 8th through to May 11th, TFL was purchasing not only UST, but also Luna. And it was doing it for its cryptocurrency exchange accounts, Binance, KuCoin, and Bitfinex. All three of these exchanges are in trial exhibit P301, so the data does match here. So these purchases had a substantial market value, as you can see, around $268 million. So this was the first purchase of Luna. They then spent around 1 billion. Okay, so it's just over 1 billion spent, okay, more than it received from LFG. So this was on top of assets they took from LFG. They somehow had $1 billion worth more that they could play with to essentially sell, right, to buy Luna, as shown here. The US dollars more than it received from LFG to purchase Luna to defend the network from a governance attack. So this Luna was actually sent, as you can imagine, on chain. It was registered in LFG. So we can actually trace the Luna that they're speaking about here specifically. Now, this is all very important because the UST that we know was on Binance that belonged to TFL, leading all the way up to the crash, 3 billion coins worth. This is around 50% of our total supply currently. The likelihood is, if they were defending the peg during the 8th to the 11th, after this all fails, after they're unable to attain peg again, what is the next probable route that you would take? It's buybacks, isn't it? Okay, so if you are Do Kwon, right, are you going to come out and say, after all of this has just failed, now we're going to start buying back the coins, you guys? We're going to buy back all of the coins on all of their social platforms. Of course you're not. Why would you do that? Everybody's going to go, jack the price up. So the likelihood is, after all of this fails, after they've tried to buy a buttload of Luna, $1 billion worth of Luna being purchased, right? The likelihood is they were buying back Luna coins at the time. And they were probably doing it in secret before DK realized, we're not going to be able to do this. Look at how many we've accumulated at this point. It's not working. And they probably just stopped the whole thing. They forked the chain and all of those assets just essentially became useless. This would all explain why suddenly all of this Luna, being Luna Classic now, suddenly materialized on Binance. The UST, being USTC now, was there, it was available. And because they had already committed to the fork, right, many days later, they would have already committed to the idea that USTC was done and doomed. That's why they didn't relaunch an algorithmic stablecoin. So at this point, right, they've got nothing to lose. So I really do believe, with the evidence that, yeah, 3 billion belongs to TFL, it was there on Binance leading up to the crash. It was all sent there, right? The likelihood is that was used at some point, vice versa. And that's why all of the Luna Classic now is sat there. But when you think about this whole situation, right, and wanting to bury this thing as deep as possible so no one can ever figure anything out, well, you would go back and you would start deleting posts, wouldn't you? Well, that's exactly what's happened. All of the posts to do with the fork, leading up to the fork, anything related to it does not exist on Agora anymore. It doesn't exist anywhere but on the blockchain. We can go back and we can actually see that the first Terra ecosystem revival plan proposed fails. When clicking on this link, it takes you to Commonwealth because it does not exist anymore, right? So now going back to this, looking at the second proposal that passed, again, clicking on the link, it doesn't exist anymore, you guys. So if you wanted to bury all of this, if you wanted to hide it, you would start at redacting information, hiding the memos for the CEXs, right? To hide what you were doing. Because essentially, right, if you came out and you said, well, we actually started buying back the coins, this, that, and the other, you're just rubbing salt in the wound, aren't you? And then you're also drumming up the idea of a revival again, which wasn't the idea. So all of this data, right? All of the information that we've got, the audit, everything points, okay, to A, TFL having around 3 billion UST coins sent to Binance, specifically Binance, no one else, which is around 50% of our total supply. And the supply is not much different now to when it was, okay, when the crash happened. In fact, we're a little bit lower, but not much. TFL was buying back Luna, although it wasn't much at the time. The likelihood is they were swapping and using the UST supply as they were doing in the audit to accumulate Luna for a major buyback. This would then explain not only the USTC that we have proof of, but it would also explain the Luna Classic that remains in bulk and never moves, is never staked, it's never utilized, and it's never ever sold. And finally, C, the most important takeaway. We have all of the evidence and information required to apply pressure on Binance to see any of TFL's remaining assets from that 3 billion USTC and whatever Luna Classic may or may not be there to go to the dead wallet and be burnt as per the final judgment, as per everybody else abiding by it. And unless we apply pressure on Binance, they're simply going to act dumb, as if they didn't know. Of course they know, you guys. This is clearly why nothing has ever been said about that bulk amount, right? Because you can't exactly come out and speak about clients' holdings, can you? No. Just as a closing statement here, if you're wondering what the next steps are going to be, it's taking all of this data, evidence, and information, and then putting it into a Commonwealth discussion for this public inquiry to be pushed into the proposal phase and then presented to Binance as a collected community. But here I am as a validator, simply going out, doing the research, looking at the data, and providing you guys with final answers instead of dragging this out over the course of 20, 30 videos of God knows what. It's here, it's available, and it's in this video. Like, share, comment. Links to everything in the description. Guys, stay safe, stay humble, stay aware, and I will for sure catch you guys in the next one.